you don't really have an option in life. Sometimes it just knocks you down over and over and over.
When you see the people who are the best in the world, they just focus on what they can control.
What is impacting my mental health? What is impacting my why?
It comes down to asking yourself, am I willing to put in the work every single day, even though I'm not seeing the results?
So why is it got to be so damn tough?
Welcome to the Toughness podcast. My name is Paddy Steinfort, your host. And today we're joined by a couple of amazing, world's best people in their own right. Firstly, we have Lacey Evans, currently a superstar on WWE. Fantastic to have you here, Lacey. Thanks for joining us. And we also have Justin Sewer, who is a mental performance coach for many different teams in many different industries. Justin, maybe you can list through the most recent ones for us.
We'll just say we're the Tampa Bay Rays right now.
All right. And also does some consulting work for different groups. And that's how I've managed to convince the both of you to get on this episode, because Justin has worked with WWE before, where Lacey also works. So tell me a little bit, Lacey, this is a really interesting chat with you for a couple of different reasons. Number one, you're amazing at what you do. But number two, in particular, given that a lot of the people that listen to this are from a military background, you yourself are a veteran. Can you tell us about how you first got into, you were in the Marines, right? For 5 years?
Right.
Is that correct? Yep.
Right. Yes, sir.
Why did you decide to go into the military?
Starting at a young age, I had a pretty rough upbringing. My parents suffered with addiction and depression, and my life growing up was just terrible. I mean, I like to say I didn't have the role models. I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, knew what I didn't want to be, because it surrounded me all the time. And so when I was 19 years old, I found myself enabling the addiction, enabling the depression, enabling this lifestyle of just not only negativity, but they were not motivated, and they just continued to choose terrible things. And I was stuck in the middle of it. And I loved them so much that I found myself enabling them, almost supporting their decisions and their habits. And I knew that I needed to do something, not only to help people, because I've always had a passion for that, but I needed to make a decision that would allow me to grow and to learn what that was that I wanted to be, because I didn't know. I didn't have the role models that I needed growing up. So at 19 years old, I went to the recruiting station in my town. I was working 2 full-time jobs. I was going to school full-time in the healthcare field. And I just went and looked what they had to offer, from Air Force to the Marine Corps to the Navy and across the board. And the Marine Corps was the finest fighting force. And that stuck out to me, because I go from the lowest of the low and the most depressed and the, drug driven, and it was all just so negative. And to tell me that you're the finest fighting force, the most motivated, the most driven, well, that's what I want to be. And that was the first time in my life that I honestly looked at someone and something and thought, that is the life that I want, that, because it was just so opposite of what I knew. So then as I sat down and I said, well, what could I do? What could I do while in the military, in the Marine Corps and the military police? So, I saw the military police, and it immediately struck a chord, because growing up in that rough childhood, that rough upbringing, one thing that I can think of help, of the good guys, of the people that are supposed to come in and do something good and right, was the police. And so I was like, that's even better. Not only could I be a part of the finest fighting force, but I could actually be there for people that are going through hell on a personal level, on a family level, and everything in between. So I chose the United States Marine Corps. I chose military police officer. And before I know it, I was but the only female on a SWAT team as part of the Marine Corps in Beaufort, South Carolina, Parris Island.
Being a trailblazer in a number of ways. Well, so there are a couple of things further down your storyline that I'm going to circle back to, and that seems like it's a theme. I want to quickly grab something you mentioned there in your story, and it made me immediately think of you, Justin, because we've known each other for a number of years, crossed paths before I even moved to the United States. And Lacey just mentioned that she was doing, that life was a bit of a jumble, and then she saw something that really resonated, because she wanted to help people and be there for them in a time they really need it, in a way that many other people can't do, right? And I know that's part of why you ended up being a mental performance coach. Can you tell us a little more about that? Because you were doing journalism school, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, I went into sports broadcasting.
There you go.
And I went into being a teacher, high school teacher. And then from there, went into wanting to work with the best athletes and performers in the world, because those like Lacey, who are at the tip of the spear, who want to be the best in the world, it's inspiring. The way they attack their days, the way their approach to, they have to control their attention. So many people clamoring for their attention. And people like Lacey and these elite performers, they fail on the big stage. The pressure that these elite performers have to experience day in and day out, the people sliding into their DMs, the things that people say to them without even knowing them, that's the group I want to work with. And also, they have such tremendous impact to see Lacey and these other elite athletes when they respond to somebody on Instagram or on social media, an autograph, a simple hello, to have that kind of impact. That's what inspires me as well. So it is mutually edifying to not only be surrounded by people who are of that calendar, but to be able to talk with them and to help them on their own journey is such an honor.
Part of that there that really resonates to me, I do similar work with NBA players, Major League Baseball players, some other industries, but really one of the biggest things with people who are, Lacey, at your level, it's just amazing the amount of people who look up to you, that some of the skills and some of the incidences we're going to touch on in today's show, some of the learnings and the growth that you've had, it actually applies to anyone in any walk of life, that you learn these skills, they can really improve their own lives. To your point, they can help support their own family who may be struggling with their own stuff. So really looking forward to digging into that. And you mentioned when we just jumped out to Jocelyn a second ago that you went into the police because it was going to help people, and you ended up being the only female on a SWAT team. Now, you're not only being the only female on a SWAT team, just looking into your background a little bit, there was a little period between the military and WWE where you started your own construction business, right? Which is not necessarily the most feminine environment. You found being a trailblazer in those areas.
I mean, it's empowering. I mean, as a mother of a little girl myself, she's 7 years old, and having the childhood that I did, you don't really have an option in life. You know, sometimes it just knocks you down over and over, and it's hard. And so being well-rounded and confident to me is so important because, and I do thank God every day that my childhood wasn't perfect because it has made me the woman that I am. My father did construction my whole life, so I was raised in it. I've been around it. And I actually started a construction company while I was active duty as a corporal in the Marine Corps. And this was before WWE. My husband is a general contractor and he's a builder. So it only made sense to me and him both start the company and it took off. And I'm a hard worker. And I was like, my dad taught me quite a lot in life, from good to bad and everything in between. And I said, this is something that I know it's normal to me. And so even my daughter goes out on job sites, grabs a hammer, grabs a drill at 7 years old and she gets in there and she puts in the work. So it's multitasking and juggling.
Super cute. I want to dig into the, two parallels there where you were on a construction site as a female, both growing up, but also running your own construction business when you're in the Marines and being the only female in a SWAT team. Like, tell us a lesson, the first lesson you learned being the only female or being a rare female in those environments. Like, how was that tough for you? What was the toughest part of that?
Every time they're going to underestimate you. They are going to assume that you are only capable of so much. And it is our jobs as women to prove them wrong. And that doesn't mean go out there and say that you can do what the men can do. No, because you know what? We're women. We should be proud of that. I love being a beautiful, feminine, strong mother. I love being a wife. I love being a woman. But it's not so much proving that we could do what the men can do. It's proving that we could do our job. Okay. And it all depends on what job you have. And I'm a firm believer in that. It just so happened that I was on the SRT, which is Special Reactions Team. It just so I don't look at it like I say that I was the only woman because that's empowering. That sounds empowering. And it is. And it should be. But I was in a male dominated. It just so happened to be mostly men. It happened to be all men. What's my job description? And I wanted to prove that I had what it took to do that job. And then before you know it, I'm the only female in that work field. You tell me what needs to be done and watch as I get the job done. And that's something I instilled in my kid all the time is don't focus so much on I'm the only female. Focus on this is what I can do. I can do the job that is at hand. And I feel like, and if you look at it that way, then it empowers more and more to where it's not so taboo. Eventually one day it won't be looked at like, wow, and you should be proud. But I feel like a lot of times women are looked at like, oh, can she do that? And it shouldn't be that way, because just watch. And we as women should prove that we can do the job. Not that we could be the only female. No, that we could do the job, because it goes different ways. Not only just in sports. What is your athletic position? What is your job? And then go as the jobs that we could do and see what we were capable of.
It's a great way of looking at it. And it really is one of the great levelers of sport in general, or of any other competitive industry, also in the military, is like, are you able to do this job or not? It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you come from. Can you do the job that we need or not? And if you're able to, you should be able to build a career around it. Justin, I can throw to you here in one of two ways, and you can take whichever one you want. One is you work with professional athletes, and there is a meritocracy. It's not a matter of like, your dad played in the big leagues, so you get to play. It's can you get the numbers or not? That's one way. And there are some parallels there for you to play with. But there's also the other one of you have a daughter who is incredibly talented, who is an actress at the highest level. She was on a blockbuster with The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So she's a big league player herself. So she's doing amazing things. And you're hearing Lacey talk about that in terms of being able to do the job. But pick one of those to go with, whether you want to draw the parallel with the athletes or with your daughter.
Well, what's interesting is, do you hear the passion of Lacey? Like, do you just see that this love about it? You can just hear it. It's palpable. It's visceral. It creates this. And that is when you see the people who are the best in the world, they just focus on what they can control and their ability to choose where they're going to put their attention. They can choose to focus on the probability. The odds don't favor people like Lacey. If you were to say, what are the odds that she's going to accomplish what she accomplishes? What are the odds that these NBA players, the NFL players, my daughter, the odds are not stacked against them. It's not for them. But the people who are passionate about what they do, they know their why, they know who they are. They don't care about the odds. They're just focused on the task in front of them, and they just attack and they fail and they learn. And another thing as well is what I see in hearing Lacey's story and a lot of the stories that I hear with these athletes I work with, they have a very tight circle of family members and friends who they love, and take all WWE superstar away for these athletes, take the World Series away for my daughter, take all of her stuff away. She knows these people know they have a circle of people who love them no matter what. And that's one of the things that I learned as well, is these people not only are they're passionate and focused, but they had a very close circle of people who they know they love them no matter what.
Yeah, great example. And that also helps. You've mentioned attention a couple of times there, Justin. Lacey, you've kind of mentioned it in a roundabout way, but that's one of the biggest predictors of whether someone can focus on what they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to, like you said, the DMs on Twitter, or what the press wants to say about you, or the drill sergeant is yelling in your face and there's little bits of spit landing on your cheek. Like, there are so many things you can pay attention to, but when you have a tight crew that you know they love you, you don't have to go searching for that love elsewhere, right? You can trust in that group, and then you can focus on the job at hand. And I'm curious, Lacey, your ability, like, when did that form for you? Like, when did you start to feel that, compared to your childhood, which sounds like it was really horrible and you did amazing just to get through that? When did you feel like things had changed for you in that, and you had a circle of people that you loved and trusted, and you felt like they could support you in what you're doing?
This job and this position I'm in with my life, being a superstar, being a mother, being a wife, being a veteran, being a motivator, that it can get very heavy, and it's a lot to carry mentally, so the moment that mentally, when it came to mental health, is when I realized that I've got a lot going on, and I come from a lot, and I've got some skeletons in my closet. I've got a lot of stuff that I deal with every day, and I'm expected to be this superstar and this amazing, incredibly healthy, vibrant, smart, everything and in between. And like I said, with the DMs and everything, so it's heavy. And every day I got to wake up and put my best foot forward. And the first time I met Justin was when we were at the PC, and he came in to teach us about a motivational class and how we juggle all this stuff. But at the end of the day, no matter what happens, what is your why? And they always stuck out to me. And every now and then I'll do a little post and a little caption about, because that's so important. And I was sitting back with this job, and like I said, all those things I just named, and I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. And I was dealing with a lot of family stuff that superstars don't deal with. And it was just all just at one time. And I literally physically couldn't breathe. It was like something was on my chest. And I needed to realize my why, because I can't be the mom it's my daughter. It's my husband. I can't be the mom that she deserves and the wife that my husband deserves. And they're my why with my mental health and everything that I'm dealing with. So it was at that moment that I realized that that circle you're talking about, I needed to evaluate it. And it quickly went from a handful to even less, because it's very important that you take that into consideration. You take your mental health and the way that you're breathing and the way that you're looking at life. And even it's something that I still have to evaluate every day almost. I have to look back and realize what is impacting my mental health, what is impacting my why, because little things could seep in, people, friends, family, and you got to cut it out, especially at the platform that I've got in this position in my life, because it's just so much. And I had to dial it back, but it was when I found myself on the floor, barely breathing, because it just hit me all one day and it was just too much to carry. And it was my why that woke me up and realized that I need to let go of people. I need to cut them off and just push back and close my gates. And in order to be the woman that I am and the people that people need, that my daughter and my husband needs.
Yeah, it's such a common theme with a lot of people who we interview on this, who we work through at the same level, where a lot of the why isn't necessarily about all the glitter and the glitz and the glamour. It's much more about people. It's less about things. It's more about like, who do you really want to get closer to? And you spoke there about something that can be summed up as, you can't look after other people unless you're looking after yourself first. You're going to run yourself into the ground. For those of us who don't have the blessing of being able to watch you as you speak here so passionately, Lacey, you did say something there where you used air quotes. You put your fingers up, did a little air quotes around superstars don't deal with that. And that's a common misperception, right? Would you say, Justin, how many athletes, pro athletes you work with that have significant issues that perhaps the kids who look after them, or even the adults who wear their jerseys around, just have no idea that they're dealing with that?
It is so funny you mentioned that, because when she said that, my antenna went up too, and people don't realize that. The average person do not realize the weight on the shoulders of people at the highest level. They think that, they're just these superstars, these athletes, they have all this money, they have all this fame, and don't realize the human nature. They're humans with families, with feelings, with schedules, with priorities, with their own whys, with their own dreams. And it's amazing to see how people don't even take that in consideration. And yeah, Patty, even with these elite athletes and soldiers as well, at the highest level, these elite soldiers, they do get frustrated. They do have panic attacks and they do have insecurities. And to hear Lacey say what she said and to be vulnerable, and just to say that and to share, that's eye-opening for people, or even other athletes, because they think, I shouldn't feel this way. And we have people like Lacey saying, no, it's okay to feel this way. And we're human, and I'm going to still do my job feeling this way. And I need to make some changes, but that was awesome. I love that part.
You said a key word there too, human. That this isn't just because I'm a superstar and I have extra weight, and there is a lot more going on for a superstar in terms of demands on their time and attention and what stress they're under. In some instances that is, but also if I can't make rent and I've just lost my job, like there's a fair bit of weight on that person too. And you're not a superstar, you're just human, and humans have wants and needs and dreams, and they fail and they get up and they have a past, and everyone has skeletons. And this is a really important point that I think starts to link some of the lessons that we learn from superstars that every one of us can apply. And I think there you've mentioned one of them, Justin, is the ability to, you mentioned shrinking your circle, but Lacey, you've gone on from doing the military and specifically breaking down some barriers there. You've set up your own construction business. Talk to us about how and when you decided to go into wrestling, because this is a human thing too. Humans want to climb mountains. There's always this innate need of like, I'm going to get that job, or I'm going to get that promotion, or I'm going to get that girlfriend or boyfriend. Like, people want to do things. They set goals. You've done a number of them and crushed them all, Lacey. Tell us about you, the one that everyone knows you for now. You're a WWE superstar, but at one stage you weren't. Tell us about that.
I never imagined that I would be in WWE. I didn't even watch WWE. It happened literally overnight. And it's something that just God put in my lap, literally, because my staff sergeant did what I thought was backyard wrestling. And there was like this little promotion. And we went to watch him, me, my husband, my daughter, we went to watch my staff sergeant. And I fell in love with it. I was like, man, I would love to get in there, because it was, the little kids around the ring, you could tell they didn't have a pot to piss in. Their parents literally would bring them to watch these in-ring performers. And I'm like, man, on Monday through Friday, I'm a freaking SWAT, like kicking in doors, training. I want the little kids to like see me and just for once in their life, for one day a week, to forget about their troubles. And that stuck out to me. And because I looked at the babies and I saw myself, you could tell they didn't have much. But here they were, their parents were paying this $5 to let them come and watch us on Saturday. And within 2 weeks, I kid you not, I got a phone call and they wanted to offer me a tryout with WWE. So I'm Googling WWE, like, what is this? Like, what is this even gonna, and I was didn't want to at first. I never wanted to be famous. I'm from the trailer park, man. And the Marine Corps was great. I was kick-ass at my job. I was a great mother. I was a great wife. I was taking care of my siblings who struggled with addiction and their mental health. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to go out there. I don't got nothing to lose. My master gun said, go ahead, go kill it, Marine, be back in 3 days. And I went out there and believe it or not, I got a phone call a few months later and they wanted to offer me a contract that I could not turn down because I realized how many people I could actually impact while having this platform. And that is my main goal and it has been since day one.
Very cool. You tell me more about, like you said, backyard wrestling. And immediately in my head, I'm picturing like, I don't even know what the scene is that's coming up in my mind, but I'm like, I'm literally walking into a house party. There's people drinking in the garage. I go out the back. There's a yard, a basketball hoop on one side. There's grass and someone's just roped off a thing and people are jumping in the mud. Like, what happens in backyard wrestling?
It's called indie wrestling and some promotions are bigger, some are smaller. The one that I particularly went to in Georgia was called APW, run by Tom Cosio, and he's actually an incredible man. He got me all the connections that I needed, and he's the one who put my name in. He called some contacts and said, hey, there's this freaking crazy blonde-haired Marine that just came in. I think that she might have what it takes. So, yeah, there was a ring outside in a parking lot, and we hit each other and flopping and flying, but I just do it professionally now.
That's fantastic. In a parking lot, that's brilliant. And it's a great similarity to the life of minor league baseball players. So, Justin, you work with the Tampa Bay Rays. Lacey, I'm assuming that first contract that you signed was not for megabucks and you weren't immediately made a superstar. You had to do some sort of like road to the majors, right? And Justin, the guys you work with sometimes can take 6, maybe even longer years of schlepping around the baseball equivalent of car parks in shitty minor league stadiums, 14-hour bus rides, sleeping in like flea-infested motels, getting paid shit. Like, I'm not even going to watch my words there. The wages of minor league baseball players are less than minimum wage. So that is a shit life to live until they get to their dream. And Lacey, we're going to dig into that journey for you. But Justin, tell us about the mental hurdles that your guys have to deal with before they even get close to their dream.
It is when you get to a certain point in the minor leagues, you start wondering, is this worth it? Do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? And then you start looking at people to your left and to your right who you don't think are as good as you. You don't think they work as hard as you. You don't think that they can hold a candle to you, yet they're getting promoted. And you're looking at people ahead of you, behind you, and you end up realizing, do I want to keep doing this? And like you said, it comes down to asking yourself, okay, what's my why, like Lacey said, and then am I willing to embrace the boredom of consistency? Am I willing to put in the work every single day, even though I'm not seeing the results? And even if I think I'm doing good, what if the person who's making the decision doesn't think I'm doing good? And so you start questioning yourself and, wait, do I need to change myself and change who I am? Okay, so that's the minor league baseball. Then I meet Lacey with WWE. And the thing about baseball and sports, it is a meritocracy. Like, if you're the best, will rise to the crop. That is not the case with the WWE. You can be amazing, and it might be a look. It might be something completely outside of your control. You have no control over. And all of a sudden, moves are being made. And so when Lacey and her contemporaries explained to me what they had to go through, I came in with this mentality, oh, it's like sports. And Lacey's like, it's nothing like sports. And I was like, oh my goodness, you're right.
It's crazy, like the similarities there between those two, but obviously the differences. And you mentioned things there that it wouldn't matter if you're playing baseball, WWE, or you were working at the local post office. Right. There are so many humans who are striving for something and they're going through shit and they watch other people get ahead who either aren't working as hard or aren't as talented or just like, it's just not fair. What you said before, Lacey, the world's not fair. It'll kick you down. And such a strong element of whether people can get through or not is willingness. You use the word willing. Like, what are you willing to put up with in order to get that thing that you're trying to get? Like, this shit is uncomfortable. And how uncomfortable you're going to allow it to be. Because at one point, you can always tap out. I'm going to use a wrestling example, right? You can always reach for the rope or you can tap, go, I'm done, right? Tell me about the first time I'm going to use that tap out example there, Lacey. Have you ever tapped out in a match? And have you ever got to the point of tapping out and going, nah, fuck it, I can do another 20 seconds?
It depends on who I'm in there with. But I mean, it's like life. I'm not really much of a tap out person. I mean, obviously in WWE, I've had before, but it just depends on the circumstance. It depends on what you're put out there to do. But like you said, life is hard and you don't get to choose what comes to you. The only thing you could choose is how you react to it. And like he said, this is nothing like sports. You know, athletically, you have to be capable of doing a lot of stuff, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's what they want. So you have to have a mentality. And I'm going to go back to what he said, because if you know your why, you know, it'll keep pushing you. It'll keep, you know, right when you want to tap out, no matter what situation you're in life, whether it's a career, whether it's financial, whether it's goal oriented, you're going to find yourself wanting to so bad. But if you honestly, without a shadow of a doubt, know what your why is, that's all, in my opinion. I found myself in that mindset. That's all it takes to keep on going. Because you can't tell me there's not a match I've been in, not a physical pain, not a mental, not emotional that I've ever been in, that I've ever given up. Because when it hurts the most, when I'm the most tired, when I'm second guessing the most, that's when I remind myself, what am I here for? What am I doing this for? And every time it lifts me back up, it moves the pain and I keep on trucking forward.
Really cool example there of being able to like dig in. You said it moves the pain. It doesn't remove the pain. It doesn't get rid of the pain. It just shifts it from the center of your attention to the periphery because something more important is sitting in the middle. I love the way you worded that. And you also, like you mentioned, without any fear or embarrassment, like occasionally, depending on the context, you might tap out. It might be in this situation, I need to be flexible. This isn't as important as this other thing. And that's a really, I mean, how many times, Justin, have you worked with an athlete who's been so fixated on this is how it has to be that you're almost like, yeah, but dude, look, there's a door over there. You're trying to squeeze through this little 2-inch window. There's a whole door open over there.
That is so true. A lot of times people look at a WWE wrestler with their arm being raised at the end of a match or a belt or a World Series championship or a Super Bowl championship, and they see the end result. They see the byproduct, but what they don't see is all of the turmoil and adversity behind the scenes. They don't see the hours of sacrifice. They don't see the lack of sleep. They don't see the financial problems. They don't see the skeletons that, like Lacey mentioned earlier, they don't see any of that. They just see this quote unquote superhuman hero who's the best in the world at what they do. And they don't even consider even all of the L's that this person took up to this point, all of the times they lost, all of the times they failed, all of the times where people who they love, even the people who they love, have not supported them, have turned against them. Like, people don't see that. And people don't see all of the lessons that these athletes and these performers have learned along the way. They're willing to admit, yep, I took an L there. I lost there. I tapped out there. But this is the lesson I learned from that L. Where the average person, they just run and hide and they don't even want to learn from it. They don't want to get better from it. They want to avoid it, know it didn't happen. They want to put their head in the sand. But the elite, they learn from it. They embrace it. They admit it. They say, yeah, I took that L. I'm going to take some more, but I'm going to use it as a stepping stone and not a stumbling block.
Right. And that's a really important point there that I think you notice a lot of people at the top. You mentioned that they learn, they review, they're self-critical, but not in a defeatist way. They're just like, where was that wrong? What could I do better? Right. Now, some very rare few are born with the Michael Jordan gene of just being absolutely obsessed, Kobe Bryant, like that they can't think of anything else. Now, that's not very normal. And for the rest of us who are more normal, none of us are, there's no such thing as normal, but we're more towards the middle of the curve. Often you'll find that people have to actually put in like, here's a trick that I do to make sure that happens. Here's a routine that I use or a process or a ritual that I make sure helps me get better rather than just hoping that I'm consistently evolving and learning. Lacey, is there anything that, particularly as you got into wrestling, right? You said it wasn't a dream. It wasn't like you've been jumping off the top rope since you were 10 and you were practicing all your moves. You would have had to learn a hell of a lot athletically as well as from a performance standpoint. Like from what period when you signed that first contract to you being a superstar, like how long was that length of time?
The first day I knew I was in trouble because I was not an actress. I wasn't really even like technically an athlete. I mean, I was a Marine. I could shoot a pie just as good as I can, or shoot a weapon just as good as I could bake a pie, you know? But what is that? Like I can kick some doors down and stop a threat. But now here I am about to have to, you know, get into a character and tell a story. And I'm like, okay. But same thing. I took it just like I took everything the rest of my life. I have this opportunity, no matter how big or small. You look at what you've got, what opportunity that you have, and then you kind of dissect it briefly of what it's going to take to actually accomplish this, right? And that's what I do. I just one thing at a time. I don't care if it's the acting. I don't care if it's interviews like this. I break it down. Okay, here's an opportunity to, and I'm going to use this as an example. When I got this phone call, okay, I'm going to be able to get on and express mental health and motivation. And that's my passion. That's what I love. Okay, so now what am I going to talk about? You know, obviously it's based on what we all come through together, but I take a moment to realize, for one, the opportunity, and then the little steps that it's going to take to get there. And I use that in everything in my life, from WWE to when I wrestling in high school to every job that I've had. Because if you look at anything further, that weight, you make the weight heavier. If you just focus on what it's going to take to get to where you want to go in your why, it makes it so much easier because it's just like little baby steps.
Breaking it down is one of the most important parts of achieving particularly large goals. There's the famous saying of how do you eat an elephant?
Right.
One bite at a time, right? And it's not necessarily thinking about the next 4 bites. It's I have this thing on my fork and I'm going to eat that one and swallow it before I move on to the next.
Right.
Justin, is there anything else from a process point of view that you would add to that you find helpful with your cohort, I guess, the people you're working with who are trying to achieve big things to help them stay in that moment or chunk it down?
Well, what I love is just how Lacey went through her process. I think both of you could agree with this. People always say, what do you teach elite athletes? What do you teach? I might teach them, but for the most thing I do, I just ask questions. They're elite. They've got to this point by themselves doing what they do. And I ask them questions like you just did. Lacey, what do you do? How do you do it? And they're able to articulate and they'll give you their framework. And then you notice it and you kind of articulate it and you highlight it and they'll be like, oh, that's what I do. And because sometimes they don't even realize they do it because it's been so organic. And to hear Lacey constantly talk about her why and talk about how she chunks it. And I think that's so important to focus on the right here, right now. And I think the best in the world, they do things on purpose. What's purpose? It's funny. I've never told Lacey this, but one of the things that I remember when I was watching, I loved to observe athletes, observe other athletes. And you just kind of could watch it. And one thing I remember in WWE, it's called bumping. They were bumping. And you see Lacey, like she studies. Like when she watches something, you have the average person who's kind of, but then you have people who just kind of like stare and study. They don't just look at it to look at it. They're literally watching to learn. And that's one of the things when in our roles, we're kind of flies on the walls and we could watch. And I remember Lacey it was a tryout. I don't know if you remember this, Lacey, but it was more looking at a tryout and you're just learning and you can see your things are going on in your mind. And that's what I see a lot of great athletes do. It's even when they're not in there, they're constantly learning. And
you made the point there. I actually have this saying usually when I'm starting with the performer, whether it's an athlete, whether it's a CEO, a trader, whatever it might be, a surgeon, if they want to sit down and get better at their performance and they're like, okay, what are you going to teach me? Like, what does this involve? I'm like, I got to be honest. I'm going to teach you like a couple of things. There's not going to be much that I teach you, but you're going to learn a shitload. You're going to learn so much because this is more about you learning about yourself than it is about me teaching you anything. I can teach you a couple of things about how attention works in the brain, blah, blah, blah. I can tell you stories for days about some of the people I've worked with. But this is much more, getting better is much more a process of you understanding yourself than it is about understanding anything else. And I want, like, that might be a great way to wrap up with the final question here, Lacey. I want to give you an opportunity. Like, if you could go back to the 19-year-old, 20-year-old who got into the Marines, and obviously you've learned a lot in the time since. You've crushed that challenge. You built a business. You've become a world superstar in a sport you didn't even know existed when that started. I'd be curious to know what you've learned about yourself that you would go back and tell that Marine.
I mean, just live in the moment, because coming from the rough upbringing that I did, I always find myself striving so much to never become what I was surrounded with. And I work so hard every day in order to create a life that is so far from that, to what I call, and I use the hashtag, break the cycle. And if I could go back, I would tell myself to just breathe and enjoy the moment, that I'm an athlete. I'm an elite for a reason, because I never stop. I give 100% in everything that I do. It doesn't matter if it's WWE, here on the set with Military Makeover. As a mother, my daughter is literally right next to me in the camper. I've got a little walkie-talkie to make sure she's okay. My husband is fed. He's hydrated. He's out there working. And I take pride in that. But a lot of times I find myself, at the end of the day, just that back to feeling like I kind of can't breathe, and that I just need to realize that we have one life to live, and it is very important to stay motivated, stay driven, but also to realize how beautiful and amazing life is and these opportunities. And because I just go so fast and I work so hard. And then I find myself thinking, man, I might have enjoyed it a little bit more if I could have just relaxed and actually taken it in instead of pushing so hard at everything that I do. Honestly, that would be it, because I believe like mental health is so important. And I find myself at a breaking point a lot of times with everything that I deal with and I struggle with and that I juggle. And I think that would be what I would tell myself.
It's a fantastic lesson. And this is no word of a joke. Before this interview, I was on another Zoom call, but with a Major League Baseball team I work with some players. And we ran a little exercise where I asked them to just settle in, close your eyes, imagine something. You're in the room and 10-year-old you walks in and sits down next to you, and they look at you and they're like, oh my God, it's so amazing. You're doing this thing that I always wanted to do. And ask them what they would tell you. What advice would they give you? And vice versa. 40-year-old you is finished, his career's finished, but he looks back and he says, he would give you some advice. And what would they both say about how you're handling this current thing right now? And to a man, every single one of them, when they shared with the group, was saying, just be here and stop complaining, because it is what it is. And 10-year-old me would have given his left you-know-what to be able to be here. And 40-year-old me would be looking at me saying, please don't lose a month just feeling sorry for yourself. Make everything count. And you just nailed it there. And it's such a common theme when you ask someone to talk about what advice they would give, that it often comes down to that. And for listeners, maybe try that yourself. Just think about what advice you would give to younger you, or more importantly, what would they say to you right now about how you handle things. Lacey, I want to thank you very much for getting on. Your energy is infectious. I don't normally talk this loudly or with this much energy. So you got me. Well done. And it makes sense also because Sua is that person. Justin, I want to thank you for coming on as well. For anyone who wants to follow up and find either of you, Lacey, what's the best way for someone to follow you or watch your stuff?
All my social media is Lacey Evans.
All right, great. And Justin Sua?
Justin Sua.
All right, perfect. Easy. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And again, thank you for supporting this.